Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the reconvened meeting of the Community Services Associates Board of Directors of Tuesday, September 28, 2021. The board initially convened in executive session. Ms. Adams, can you confirm that we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We'll move to ratify the Board of Directors meeting minutes of June 29, 2021. You've all had a chance to review them. They were approved electronically, but we do want to ratify them in this meeting. Any comments or concerns with the minutes as they are now drafted? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion to approve. Mr. Barth, second. Mr. Richardson, all in favor, raise your hands. They are approved. Next is our chair remarks. As I indicated in my letter yesterday, when we start a year, we have some goals to achieve. We have some tasks that we'd like to get done. Obviously, during the year, things change, but we certainly have some objectives that we hope to achieve. I'm pleased, as I noted yesterday, that we have achieved a number of those. Obviously, the most important was the passage of the referendum, the critical infrastructure referendum. And although it's still in litigation and in discovery, I remain confident that we will be able to have the funds that we need on a long-term basis to fix our critical infrastructure, some of which we're already seeing in use in North Sea Pines Drive. Yesterday, I drove on Greenwood Drive into the gate and could not be more thrilled to look to the right and see a grassy area where we used to have an eyesore called the Gallery of Shops. The staff continues to work on completing the landscaping of that area, and at some point in the relatively near future, the various construction items will be gone, and you will see a much more attractive entryway thanks to Sam's and our staff's efforts to get the necessary permitting and to clear that lot in record time fashion. So that's certainly a major issue. We adopted, thanks to the work of our land use management committee, the land use management rules with significantly greater enforcement opportunities, and we'll hear today from Ryan Cash. So all in all, I think we've had a lot of successes during the year. Those are just a few. We've also, just another one I thought about yesterday was that at the request of any number of homeowners, we put a full-time guard at Tower Beach to maintain a more reasonable level of enforcement on Tower Beach parking. I know we've gotten a lot of compliments on that, but we have a lot of work to do. Today we're going to start the process of considering whether or not to adopt noise regulations on leaf blowers. We clearly know from our finances and just the nature of the employment situation in Hilton Head that we need to raise more money to be able to adequately staff our community. We need to continue to work on the Greenwood corridor to improve traffic flow there. And we need to work on not only our critical infrastructure that's being funded, but other infrastructure that needs to be considered as we move forward. So all of those are goals to, if not complete during the fourth quarter, certainly get started. But I think this board can take a great deal of pleasure on what we've accomplished to date and with a view to the future. With that, I'll turn to Sam for your remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope everybody had a great summer. It's been a very busy summer for CSA. I think our last meeting was in June, and a lot has gone on. We have a lot of things to report from the staff today. There's also one addition to the report for us from a staff perspective. We've got Ryan Cash, our land use monitor, who will be reporting on land use monitoring issues, and just looking forward to having that. Just to remind the community that the land use monitor is a joint program that grew out of CSA and ASPO working together to adopt new land use rules that went into effective July 1st. Ryan has been very busy with those rules and has done a great job with it. Looking forward to hearing from him, and appreciate all of his hard work, as well as the LUM board and the two co-chairs of the board, Charlie Miner and Dan Aguazo, but really all of those board members have done a great job getting that program off the ground. And Ryan is doing an excellent job taking those new land use rules and regulations and implementing them and moving our community ahead. So I'll say the rest of my remarks as we work through the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Sam. With that, I'll start our director's reports with communications. Amanda Sutcliffe-Jones. Amanda, before you start, I did forget to remind the community that we will be taking questions from the community at the end of the meeting. If you have any questions for the board, please address them during our meeting to questions@csacpines.com, and we will answer them to the best we can at the end of the meeting. Amanda, you're on.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning to all fellow board members, as well as the staff in the conference room. Thank you so much. A couple of quick items to pass from the CPines CSA Communications Department. We recently launched a redesigned website. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, you can view it at www.cpinesliving.com. There you can find information on CPine CSA projects. You can review board resources. You can easily make requests for services that are provided by CPine CSA, such as an owner decal replacement, an owner ID card. You can also update your owner information and then also make a request to our maintenance department or even our land use management department. Next on the list is our upcoming CPines CSA Board of Director elections. A couple of reminders for that process. We are moving to an online voting process. We're very excited about that. Back in June, the board approved that process to be moved electronically online. Staff's been working hard with our vendor Vote Now. They will be our elections administrator, and they will be overseeing and handling our online voting process. We're asking to make sure that you have your updated contact information on file with CSA. If you haven't already done so, we need an updated mailing address as well as an email address. Our date of record for this process is October 1st, which is this coming Friday. So if you haven't done so already, we've had lots of folks send in updated information, but that is our date of record for the vote for the director's elections. If you don't make it by that time, we certainly would still ask you to get your information updated so we can make sure we're getting our communications to you. Each qualifying resident will be sent a postcard for their property in CPines with a unique voting code. You'll follow those directions to place your vote online. And then we also will be sending some information via email to the primary contact on the property as well. And you can use that email as well to vote. So we're excited about that process. An upcoming reminder, October 1st also happens to be our deadline for a nomination by petition. So if you're interested in applying by petition, you can certainly get that information off of our website, cpinesliving.com/elections. And November 1st is the date that the voting period will open, and it will close on December 1st. The names and information, the names of those candidates who are interested in running are already posted on our website that were recommended by the Class A and Class B nominating committees, and you can find that on our website as well. A couple more items. The CPine CSA committee applications are also available on our website. Those are due by December 1st, 2021. If you're interested in serving on any of our committees for CSA, please submit your application. And a couple of upcoming events. Deep Well donation drive on the 7th of October. The Beaufort County Library bookmobile will be out in the parking lot of the CPines Center over that way on the 8th of October. We will be hosting a community shredding event, which will be outdoors on the 12th of October. And then the community bloodmobile will be in the area on the 15th of October. If we can be of any assistance here in the communications department at CPines Community Service Associates, please feel free to reach out to us by phone or email our general info inbox at info@csacpines.com. That's all I have, Larry.
Any questions for Amanda? Amanda, the one thing I would note, have a small interest in this. There are currently 4 people running for the Board of Directors election for CSA. There may be additions based on the petition deadline. I think October 26th is the date for a candidates forum. And certainly for those who want to meet the candidates and hear what their positions are on a variety of issues, that would be the day. I also understand the nominating committee has asked the public if there are questions specific to the candidates they would like to be asked that can be answered in writing prior to that. And Amanda, what's the deadline for putting for those 2 things in the time of the forum?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that reminder. So the can't meet the candidates forum for Seapine CSA will be held via Zoom on October 26th at 2 p.m. And that will be from 2 to 3:30 p.m. And then the deadline to submit questions to the nominating committee was between September 16th and September 27th. So yesterday was our cutoff for question submission. So we'll be getting those over to the nominating committee for their consideration.
Great. And again, you'll have written responses to those questions and the opportunity to meet the candidates live and in person and hear their positions on a variety of issues on the 26th. And I certainly encourage everyone to look at that. And more importantly, I encourage everyone to vote on the Board of Elections, Board of Directors elections. It's an opportunity to put people who you believe think the same way you do about the community on the board. And that's the best way to influence how the community is run. So with that, I will thank you, Amanda. I will turn to Finance and Administration, Ms. Shanahan. Let me move the camera so you can be seen. Oops. Good.
I don't know why I'm in witness protection over here, but it's the way that this room is lit. So good morning, everybody. The Finance and Administration Department has been really busy over the summer. Currently, we obviously are developing the 2022 budget, which is keeping us very, very occupied. I wanted to give a report that we are now in the process of putting liens on properties that have been in arrears. As the board knows that we made the decision not to put any liens on properties in 2020 due to the pandemic and the financial hardship. So these liens are for past due 2020 and 2021 assessments. There are approximately 30 properties that will have liens on them. Also this summer, we put out a request for a proposal for insurance brokerage services. We've had a broker that we've had for probably over 10 years, and we felt that it was time to go back out in the marketplace. We had 3 very, very strong candidates for it, but we finally, after meetings and lots of communication, we went with a worldwide firm called USI, and this particular office is out of Charleston. Sam and I have met with them several times, and we're really excited about moving forward. One of the things I just did want to mention, what to me and Sam would put them in the first spot was when we asked them what they felt like our biggest exposure was. It wasn't the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, it's because you have officers that are armed. It was, your exposure is how you have been marketed to the underwriters. That she really felt like that we need to get out there and tell our story and do a better job of doing that. So I will keep you updated as to the progress on that. And finally, Finance Committee, MEMP, and Communications Committee have all been working with what's called an infrastructure task force. And what this is doing is putting the projects with the new referendum money, putting a priority on them, as well as communicating the projects and the money to the property owners. And speaking of software, we're still working with security on getting that software up and running. And we also laid out a new payroll software that we went live on July 1, and it has really been a very smooth transition. I thank my staff for really making this and everybody likes it a lot better. So that's my report.
Any questions for Victoria? Dave Ellis?
How does the non-payment of the assessment compare with previous years?
It's about equal.
Okay.
It's
just
about
curious.
equal.
Any other questions? Carolyn?
Are we anticipating a reduction in our insurance costs because we're changing, or better coverage, or both, would you say?
I don't think we're going to see a decrease in premiums right away, I think, but I can already tell you that we're getting superior service.
Okay.
I mean, the service is much better, and I think that she's really got a really good handle on what our needs are, and and to continue. I mean, it's not just a one and done. She continues to get to know us more.
Good. Thank you.
Yes.
Mark King? Unmute, please. Still on mute.
You're still on mute.
There you go.
How about now?
Yeah.
Victoria, who was our previous agency for 10 years?
NFP out of Bluffton. They were previously Beacon Insurance.
Okay, and who were the other folks that we had interviewed for this position this go around?
Who bid? It was another company. It was a Marsh McKellen company out of Atlanta called Ironwood, and Sterling Seacrest out of Savannah. Those were the three.
Okay. Did we give any consideration to local Hilton Head agencies?
The research that we did felt like we needed to go outside locally.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So yes, we did give it consideration and we decided not to.
Yeah, I personally feel that sometimes we make decisions, and I'm not saying just CSA, but sometimes we just assume that we have to go off the island for certain talents that we have a lot of good folks working on Hilton Head that I think we need to support as they're part of our local economy. And as we go to these national firms, they're taking our premium dollars and spending somewhere else versus the local folks. My company has had extremely good experience with local agencies doing very, very good job for us for many services. So I encourage us to not immediately discount local agencies and vendors and contractors.
And we do make
That's all. Thank you.
We do make a conscious effort to use local as much as we can.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions for Victoria? Thank you, Victoria. Keep up the good work. I know it's a busy time for you all. Next is maintenance, enhancement, and major projects. Russell?
Good morning, and
There it is.
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir. So thank you. Good morning. Just wanted to provide a quick update on a couple of our projects that we've been working on. North Sea Pines Drive, Phase 1 was completed earlier this season in the spring. We've now begun work on Phase 2 from the Beach Club towards the Ocean Gate. We're presently working by beach marker 39 in Red Cardinal Road. Drainage work. We also have tree work going on along the roadway. Amanda's provided all those announcements on our weekly emails to the community of the ongoing work. As we all know that North Sea Pines Drive is a lot of that infrastructure has failed over the course of time in many years, and we're addressing not only the roadway but the drainage outfalls to the nearby lagoon system between Sea Pines Drive and the golf course. Other projects that we're working on are have been going on all summer is ditch cleaning. We've cleaned well over 3 miles of ditch, which is an integral part of the master stormwater drainage system in Sea Pines. We have more work planned throughout the fall season on these Sea Pines ditches, as they've long needed attention in many areas throughout the community. For the fall, we also have roadway and leisure trail repairs planned in select areas, as well as tree work. This is an important part or important time of the year for us, as we have an opportunity to get into some of these areas that are less visited than they normally would be in the height of the season. Tropical storm Elsa, as we know, threw us a bit of a curveball earlier in July. We had hundreds of trees down across roads and open space and other areas in the community. We are still cleaning up in some of these areas. We had about 3 times the normal amount of debris that we would have at that time of year. And certainly we have a surplus of mulch. So if anyone does need mulch out there, please give our maintenance department a call, as there's plenty to go around. Also, as part of ELSA, there's a lot of mailboxes that were damaged in the community. We're about 4 to 6 weeks out on mailbox repairs right now. Probably one of our more significant backlogs that we've had, certainly in the last couple of years. Our infamous flower rotation is planned for mid-November. We'll be changing out all the flower beds throughout Sea Pines and those main focal areas. And we'll be making those flowers available at Lot 1. Again, we've had a busy summer, and one of the things that we did experience so far to date is well over 60 inches of rainfall in the Sea Pines, most of that coming in July. So again, that rain, and especially in excess of a few of those storms where we had 6, 7, 8 inches at a clip, has really taxed the drainage system, and we've continued to experience failures within the system. Currently, we're working with the town of Hilton Head on repairs to Beach Walk 26, 46, 47, Wagon Road, and Ruddy Turnstone. Also planned for this fall, we'll be working with the town on repairs to the Baynard Cove outfall structures, which are on Sea Pines Drive near South Beach Lane. That concludes my report this morning, Mr. Chairman. So if you have any questions, feel free.
First, any other, Jim Caskey, you have your hand up?
Russell, great job on the cleanup of Elsa, and every time we have these storms, it's just amazing how much flooding we get. So I think we're on the right track. What do you think that the total cleanup of Elsa was, or is, since you're still doing it?
Financially, I would defer to Sam on that question, on the financials. Sam?
I think Dave Borghese is going to cover that in his presentation. So I will leave it for Mr. Borghese.
Okay.
Who can I
Fair
give it to? Nobody.
So we will have an answer for you on that, Jim. Any other questions for Russell? Russell, I'll just note, Elsa was clearly one of the bigger storms, but then we had the most recent tropical storm kind of graze us, a week ago, or maybe less than a week ago, where again, we had just inches and inches of rain. Living on Governor's Road, I can tell you that the areas where the ditches were cleaned was substantially improved. The ditches were filled, but the roadway wasn't. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of work to do between ditches and drainage. And I know the community appreciates all the work that's being done, but anyone who has any questions about the need to fix our infrastructure, who was living here over the last 3 months during these incredible downpours, should recognize how important it is. So thank you for all you and your team are doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll turn then to operations and special projects. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. I just had a few quick updates. Wanted to invite everyone that's listening to join us Saturday, December 18th at noon for 12th annual Wreaths Across America ceremony in Six Oaks. Participants will have an opportunity to assist with laying wreaths as we remember and honor the approximately 1,000 veterans that are in Six Oaks Cemetery. So Saturday, December 18th at noon. On the Forest Preserve, our annual fundraising letter is going to be hitting the mail next week, and ask that you all, consider supporting the Sea Pines Forest Preserve, our natural treasure, during your year-end, end of year giving. And then lastly, the Forest Preserve signature event, the bonfire, will be held on Friday, November 12th from 4:30 to 7:30 a.m. Ticket information will be coming soon, and we hope that you can join us for a great evening of food, friends, and the outdoors. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Any questions for David? I want to emphasize what David, Charlie, go ahead. Unmute, Charlie. Unmute, Charles. Where's that coming from? No, you're still muted, Charlie. There you go.
Okay. One comment, unfortunately, we needed to cancel the annual yard sale, which is a popular event, but for various reasons over the last few years, we haven't been able to hold it. And we just didn't have enough participation this year.
Correct. And what I was about to say is I want to encourage everyone who's listening and who may see this video, the solicitation letter will go out for the Forest Preserve. If you can add that to your list of charities. The Forest Preserve is doing great. The Forest Preserve Committee is doing great things. The advisory committee has come up with some real great ideas for improving that area. It is a treasure. Having just been in New York with Central Park and some of the parks there and how much they're used, we have a great opportunity to make that even more user friendly and still keeping the nature, the ecological expanse that we have. So please consider giving when you have a chance to do so. Thank you, David. Next, I'll turn to Toby McSwain for safety, security, and transportation. Welcome, Toby.
Good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing?
Good.
Just a quick update from the security side. It continues to be a busy summer. Right now, we've had 27,000 plus calls for service year to date. I would think to say that we would probably exceed the 30,000 calls for service like we did last year. I would like to highlight a couple of numbers that we have just so that you're familiar with the type of calls that we're getting. And these numbers that we'll speak on are numbers that are year to date. 911 hangups. We've had 456 activated alarms, 393. We've had 26 motor vehicle break-ins inside of Sea Pines. Those are continuing outside of our gate. North Forest and South Forest Beach last week got hit again with numerous car break-ins that the sheriff's office is working. We've had 5 reported burglaries inside of Sea Pines this year, 147 domestic animals. We have issued over 700 either state citations or warning tickets for various traffic offenses. Noise complaints, 229. We've had 63 motor vehicle collisions year to date inside of Sea Pines, 395 improper parkings. And something that is a little higher than we've had in the past, we've had 39 people report of falling or either crashing on a bicycle year to date as well. And as always, we've had close to 800 wildlife calls for service, and they continue. So that's about the average of what we've been doing. But I would fully expect that we're going to exceed our 30,000 calls for service. Just to kind of give you some heads up or some insight, last week, we still are averaging 45 to 50,000 vehicles a week through the Greenwood Gate. We were doing that in the height of the rental season. The numbers continue to be high, although it doesn't seem quite as busy as it did in our June and July, but we're still running quite a few number of vehicles through the Greenwood Gate. Staffing, I report on this just about every time. We still have 3 openings, 2 gate officers, a patrol officer that we're trying to recruit for. I am happy to say that we're getting back Sergeant DeJuan Holmes, who has been employed with us for quite some time. Over the last 18 months, he has been deployed with the military and he has finally come back. So we're glad to see that he's back home. Trolley, just want to give you an update of what we've done on the trolley this year. It was a fairly busy season. We moved 92,000 people during the trolley season. The biggest route or the busiest route that we had is our blue route, which you would expect runs from the lighthouse down to the beach club. We had 38,000 riders ride the blue line this year. Our beach route wasn't the busiest, but we moved 15,000 people from our beach lot. And I would like to just touch on the types of cars, as you would expect, the short-term renters, resort guests, those buying a weekly rental pass for the biggest use of the beach trolley lot. Property owner guest pass, we had 1,144 of those, 45 relative decals, and 17 long-term renters use the beach shuttle this year, and only 9 property owners came and utilized the beach shuttle. In closing, I know that you probably have noticed over the last month, our contractor has been working on the enclosure at the Greenwood Gate. They have finished the construction. Right now, we're waiting on a CO. The glass has been back ordered, I believe, for 8 to 10 weeks. So once we get the tempered glass in and it's installed, we will get that section and get the officer moved to the driver's side of the roadway and get that operation set up and running. I think it's going to be a huge improvement to the Greenwood Gate and much more efficient. That's all I have as far as an update, Mr. Chairman, unless you have any questions.
Mr. Ellis?
Greg Thompson.
No, and Dave's trying to unmute. David, unmute. There you go.
On the automobile collisions, were any of them with animals?
You mean like hitting the deer?
Right.
Yeah, I would have to. I don't have that. It's not broken down in the field that I have. We have had, just looking at the reports right off the top of my head, we have had quite a few this year. Unless you have those numbers in front of you, but I don't. We have had some, but not like it was 10 plus years ago.
Okay.
Mr. Thompson, Greg?
Toby, how's the 30,000 calls a year compared to other communities on the island, like Palmetto Dunes? Is our 30,000 double what they do, or you have any sense of that?
I would think you could count Palmetto Dunes, Leamington, Wexford, and we would still exceed all of those put together. Yes, by thousands of calls. Yes.
Okay.
And we, a lot of these, now I will say that of these numbers we've had, flip to it here real quickly. We provided the house check service, which right now, 20 of those 30,000, 27, almost 3,000 calls of those are us pulling on door handles for property owners, a service that I think some of the other communities don't offer when people are out of town. So that would be included in this 30,000 number.
Okay.
Toby, on the crashes, the number of crashes, can you tell me how many occurred, or maybe a question, if they occur on the Greenwood between the gate and the circle, is that part of our crash number?
This would be crashes all over Seapine. So this would also be the parking lot at Harbor Town. My sheet, the way I pull these, it just gives me the raw number. It doesn't break it down by location.
But do you have a sense, are there specific areas where we've had a uniquely high number of particular intersections or that you're aware of?
Not right off the top of my head. A lot of these, Seapine Center, Harbor Town, we get a lot of fender benders in the parking lot. So a lot of these calls are going to be fender bender related. We have had a fair number of Greenwood Drive between the main gate and Fraser Circle that have occurred with some of these accidents have had some serious injuries involved in them as well. But I would have to really take all the reports and do kind of a deeper dive to see kind of where we're at. That's one thing I'm excited about this new software, that I'm gonna be able to get a lot more detail when it comes to calls for service.
And the question on the fender benders, I know people tend to call, we all do, we tend to call the police so we can get a report from the police for insurance. Are they calling security for that purpose as opposed to the sheriff's, which you would normally do if you were calling what I call the official police?
Some of these accidents we issue what's called a 309 form. There is not a full detailed accident report that's completed on private property. Those only occur out in the state highways. Sometimes we will issue a 309, but more often than not, we'll call Beaufort County to kind of push the accident in their hand and let them handle it.
That's what I'm trying to get. So when we're called for a fender bender and we show up, what does our security officer do?
We ascertain the same information to find out, okay, what was the cause of the accident? Is it something that's related to our roadway that we need to take a look at it? So we investigate to find out, okay, what is the cause of the accident? Is it inattention of the driver? Is it speeding? What is the case? So we document the report just like Beaufort County, but we do not complete the official highway accident report that goes to the state.
Gotcha.
Beaufort County does.
Okay. Jim Caskey?
Toby, or it appears that the gates are now installed and fully for the bicyclists at both the Ocean and the front that we were back ordered parts and all that. Are they all working like they should be?
You're kind of cutting in and out. I think you're asking about the Ocean gate, the bicycle gates.
Yes. Yeah, at the Greenwood. Are they fully operating?
Yep. Yes, as far as I know, they were functional. The contractor was out last week. We have a brand new one. I think Russell might be able to speak to this a little better in the North Sea Pines Drive construction project. That there is going to be a new gate configuration that is done back there. But they, as of last Thursday, they were fully functional.
Okay, any other questions for Toby? Toby, thank you. Again, great job from the force under difficult circumstances.
Thank you.
Okay, then last but not least report is from our land use manager, Ryan Cash. Ryan hasn't been giving reports, so we welcome him. I think the only other time Ryan's been here was way back a couple of years ago. So Ryan, welcome to the meeting, and it's your turn.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ryan Cash, and I am the land use monitor for Sea Pines. And today I'll be reporting on land use management. I am going to share my screen at some point so I can show you guys a little bit more information. So let me do that now. Can everybody see this?
We can. Thank you.
Perfect. A quick description on my job title. I perform community inspections throughout Sea Pines in order to bring properties into compliance using the land use rules, regulations, and covenants. My job is to help promote the aesthetic excellence of all residential property within Sea Pines and to foster standards which will maintain Sea Pines as the premier community on Hilton Head Island. CSA Sea Pines recently implemented new land use rules and regulations that went into effect July 1st. These rules bring a new level of enforcement to Sea Pines that to me is greatly appreciated. I've also recently been using a new violation software program called SmartWebs, which has been a tremendous help regarding the sending of violation notices, tracking violations, and generating violation reports. Since the start of July 1st, there have been a total of 270 total violations cited. So I'm definitely staying busy within Sea Pines. As you can see at this next graph, there are a number of different types of violations that are observed throughout Sea Pines. Since July 1st, the most egregious violation categories are unsightly, which includes miscellaneous items being left out, beach towels drying on railings, beach items like kayaks, canoes, trailers left out in view, as well as more egregious landscaping violations and trash can violations. I do expect a lot of the unsightly violations to drop off as we head into winter. Majority of those trash and unsightly violations were due to the cause of the influx of renters coming into Sea Pines. So this is just a quick breakdown of what majority violations we're seeing or I'm seeing on a daily basis. For contact purposes, if you need to get in touch with me, you can reach me at my phone number at 843-671-7820, by email at lum@csaseapines.com. And there is also a new land use request form that's found on the Sea Pines Living website where homeowners can fill it out and report to me if they have any concerns on any properties throughout Sea Pines. So that is my quick presentation, and I appreciate everybody. And if you have any questions, I'm all ears.
Thank you, Ryan. The chairman had to step away for just a second. So any questions from board members?
Ryan,
Yes, sir.
it's Barry. Just wondering how responsive, when somebody gets a violation, do you get a good positive response from people? And what percentage would you say you get versus people who kind of want to fight the information you're providing?
Right. Compared to what I was doing last time with the Smart Web software program, it has helped tremendously with getting homeowners to reach back out to me regarding the notice they received. Honestly, 8 out of 10 times, the homeowners will contact me and say, you know, I was not aware of it, or I have it on agenda to get taken care of. Majority of the time, if a homeowner receives the notice and they are out of town, they just request a timeline extension, which I'm happy to provide. Again, I'm all for resolution than anything else. I just want Sea Pines to look the best it can. But I will say with the new Smart Webs, it has helped tremendously from what I was doing a year ago by sending email notices rather than using an actual program. So, you know, before I was getting maybe 4 or 5 out of 10 responses, I'm getting, you know, closer to 8 or 9 out of 10 responses for this now.
That's great. Thanks.
I think with Jim Caskey.
Yeah, regarding your, the unsightly and the nuisance and the parking, and you made a comment that that's due mostly to rental. So when you're approaching the people who are residing at the time of the rental, does the owner also get notified? And is there any law of numbers like 80-20, like there's a few properties that are chronically having problems with renters?
I only deal with the homeowner and or the property manager who is in charge of that property. My notices go out via email and snail mail to the homeowner directly. That way I can explain to them, this is what I observed, this is what we need to focus on so that this same issue does not keep happening. So my job is to also educate homeowners so that they can educate their renters or guests about what is permitted within Sea Pines. Majority of those violations, as you said, were probably about 70% of those unsightly were probably rental behavior. But it'll be interesting to see as we move into the winter season, you know, what slows down and what kind of picks up as we change from having a tremendous amount of people here to mostly long-term residents within Sea Pines.
And are those unsightly scattered all over, or do you find them concentrated in certain areas of Sea Pines?
They're mostly scattered all over, since majority of them do deal with renters. It's not really more of an area, it's kind of just spread out. There are a few areas like off Club Course and Old Military where I'm dealing with a slightly more violations that regard to renters. But overall, it's just the Sea Pines issue altogether.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Ryan? Ryan, thank you. I appreciate it. It's good to hear that things are working as well as they are, both under the new rules and with the new software.
Definitely.
So
Thank you, sir.
Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it.
Okay, that completes our director reports. Sam, any final remarks?
No, sir. Just appreciate all the hard work of the directors, and we've got had a busy summer, and look forward to moving into the fall and finishing the year strong.
Great. And we'll move on to the financial update. Victoria, you can handle this? We're going to turn it over to Mr. Borghese.
I can handle it.
Okay. You're on.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to start with the balance sheet. If you'll see, our investments are showing at $12,700,000. Approximately $2.5 million of that balance is invested in treasury notes. That is coming from the assessments that are collected in the beginning of the year. We don't need all that cash, so we invest it and they mature throughout the year. Your accounts receivable, there's probably approximately 60 residential property owners that are behind. And the balance of that, it would be short-term rental companies that are calling in passes. You've got your fixed assets, your current liabilities. One thing I did want to point out that you do not see on this balance sheet is any debt. The association does not have any debt. Moving down to the fund balance, there are several designated fund balances that I wanted to point out. One is the infrastructure improvements, and you'll see it is in a deficit situation. That is due to the board electing to start spending the 2020 referendum funds before we actually collected them, but finance is keeping track of those dollars so it can be repaid once that referendum funds start coming in. And finally, the Beach Club shuttle, you're aware of that $2 increase on the short-term renter from March through Labor Day. We keep track of those $2, and that gets offset with any expenditures that are made at Lot 8. And we currently, between the program from 19, and we did not do it in 2020, when we did it this year, we're at we have $78,675. The fund balance on the next page, that's just for you, or if anybody's interested in tracking those funds. Moving on to the income statement, I'm going to focus on the actual to the budget. You're looking at revenues, our daily gate passes, and this is not just daily visitor. This is all the passes sold at the gate. So your trucks, commercial, dailies, we're up over budget by over $500,000. And our short-term renter program, we're up over budget over $227,000. And our annual permits are up $65,000 over budget for the year. So that's phenomenal. Moving down to expenditures, you can look at that and your variances. A significant variance you'll see under general administration. That is simply a timing issue. And under the administration building, you'll see a deficit of unfavorable variance, and most of that is due to the expenditures associated with the gallery of shops. I do expect Russell and his team to expend all of that $2.5 million in MR&R. Moving down to the other income, just three things of note. One is we were able to recover from the town of Hilton Head over $111,000 due to reimbursements for stormwater repairs that we have made. And also we have another $111,000 in gain on disposal of assets. A lot of those are coming from the sale of some of those old trolleys. We were able to dispose of them. And believe it or not, we're trading in some maintenance trucks. Those trucks are holding their value we're getting trade-in values of $25,000, $27,000, $28,000, and these trucks are 4 and 5 years old. And finally, as Jim pointed out, we do have Tropical Storm Elsa expenditures. Through the end of August, we've expended $212,000. I'm told from maintenance that they anticipate it will be in the area of $250 by the time we're done. And how we are paying for that is through that excess in the gate fees.
And just a reminder to the board on Tropical Storm Elsa. Unfortunately, that was a named storm and it was not declared an emergency. So there is not the ability to try and recover those costs through a special assessment. But fortunately, as Victoria just noted, because of our conservative budgeting moving into 2021, because we didn't have a baseline budget, a very good number to start with from 2020 because of COVID, that conservative nature helped us. And so those dollars are covered in those costs.
Okay, Victoria, time for questions? Do you have anything else on the?
No, I just need a motion for approval.
Are there any questions from the board on any of these issues, any of these numbers? Okay, then do we have a motion to accept these financial statements?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Spear, seconded by Mr. Thompson. All in favor, raise your hands, please. You are accepted. Terrific. I think you have a budget amendment.
Yes, during the summer months when we got approval from the town to tear down the gallery of shops, Sandra sent around an email asking for approval of a budget amendment of $200,000. I just need a ratification of that approval.
Okay, we've all voted on it already, but all in favor of ratifying the approval of the budget amendment, raise your hands, please. Any opposition?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Congratulations, thank you. Anything else, Victoria, on finance?
That's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
then we will move to committee reports. Mr. Ellis, communications. Actually, before we start that, two things. In your packet, you have the ARB monthly status report for January through August. Self-explanatory, but I did want to note that it's in your packet. And then just briefly, unfortunately, over the last several weeks, we lost a member of our community who was also a very active in our committees, Peter Vero. Peter died suddenly. Peter was very active in a number of our committees. He was involved in a government task force. He was very active in the land use management committee, active in the bike ambassador. So I just wanted to mention and send our condolences to Peter's family on the loss of a fine community member and an active committee participant. And now David Ellis will move to communications. Unmute, please, David. Okay.
Amanda did such a great job giving the communications report. I'm not going to duplicate anything, so I have nothing to add. Thank you, Amanda.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. We'll then move to our Wisconsin Badger who returned this week so he could be here in person. Mr. Borghese, our treasurer on finance.
Hello, everyone. The Finance Committee met in August and essentially did the recommendation for the budget amendment. The committee also reviewed the proposals for insurance services, provided commentary. The consensus was that all of the proposals were outstanding and was really left up to staff to decide which organization could best serve the staff and the community. That's all that happened. The committee did not review in person the August financial statements, but we did circulate them, and I reviewed them in detail with Victoria, and consequently believe that they were appropriate for acceptance by the board. That's it.
Any questions for David? Seeing none, we'll move on to gate entry. Mr. Corbett.
Thank you. And as has been spoken, Victoria kind of gave the report on all gate passes. I will state that a busy summer, that the rental passes showed an increase in 21 of 41% compared to 2019. So that just goes on to really support how busy we have seen the resort community. And Lou Matea had given the trolley ridership as what Toby also commented on, that ridership was up and close to where we were in 2019. And then the gallery of shots, as we are greatly impressed with seeing the new grass going in, as well as what Sam Bennett commented on the new kiosk at the Ocean Gate. I will state that we're continuing to discuss the Sea Pine Circle and the Pope Avenue corridor with the town, as well as some local engineers with regard to some recommendations that we'll bring forward to the community and also to the town in the near future. We're also kind of looking at that left turn lane that goes into Wells Fargo and the restaurant bar area, as we have experienced a number of years, many accidents that have occurred there. So that is being addressed, and Sam is on top of that with the town, as well as the subcommittee that is looking into that. And no further business, that's my report.
Any questions for Carrie? Thank you, Carrie. I know there's a lot of work to be done in that corridor, and I appreciate all the work that's being done there. Mr. Caskey on governance.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Three things, and the governance committee, just to ground it, is a mix of, we're all property owners, but we're a mix of board members plus a number of property owners who really have been working to try to look at bringing more and more best practices to the governance processes here. The first, Amanda already talked about, but the spearheading of electronic voting. We've been monitoring, the level of email enrollments we have, the mechanisms that are going to be used during elections, the issues of privacy, the issues of confidentiality, all of those things. And so it's very exciting that we're entering that age of electronic voting. And we hope to be carrying that forward for referendum and those kind of activities. I wanted to, on two other points that governance has been working on, I wanted to orientate the board to two pieces of document, or two different documents that you're going to be receiving. The first on a redo and lots of revision to the conflict of interest policy and mechanics around that. And the second is a process of board self-assessment. And so we'll be sending out the draft conflict of interest policy that we've been working on. And for your review, and we wanted to orientate you to how to think about it, how to read it, so that when we come back in November, we can have a very good discussion and hopefully approval of it. The conflict of interest policy that we've used historically within Sea Pines has absolutely followed the South Carolina law. The governance committee, working with the executive committee of the board, felt we could improve our processes and improve the rigor around managing conflict of interest. And it's very important to note that conflicts are good. They're not necessarily bad. It's the management of them. Because when you come to a committee or a board as diverse as we are, with our backgrounds, and that there is potential for conflict, but as long as you're managing it and disclosing it and describing it and being proactive about it, it's an okay governance process. So what we did is we took the South Carolina law, some best practices around for conflict of interest, and we worked with our outside legal counsel to synthesize South Carolina law with how can we strengthen some of these internal processes, and have come out with this new policy. The other, and so this is the policy we'll be sending to you after this introductory comment, and if you all have any questions. So we, outside legal counsel, following state law, but really expanding some of the process. And one of the things we introduced within the conflict of interest is this concept of inherent conflict, that given a board that's made up as we are, of property owners, of resort appointees and commercial appointees, there are inherent conflicts amongst all three groups that are natural for the kind of deliberations we have, be it a gate entry policy, be it how we think about short-term rental. There's going to be those overlaps. So we did some work around trying to understand that we all come to the table with some of these inherent conflicts as property owners, as resort, as commercial. And we just, again, need to manage those processes. The other aspect that you'll see within this new approach is we're introducing the concept of a conflict of interest disclosure form. And what that is a best practice within governance that you answer a few questions about potential interests that could result in a possible conflict with CSA as we do board governance business. And then you attest to these conflicts and you sign it. And we're just going to be describing some mechanics on how to manage that. It'll probably be the chair of governance with the chair of the board and our executive director, who will review those disclosure forms, assuming they're passed by the board, and be on have a higher level of awareness to be able to manage the agenda and manage issues as we go forward. So that will be coming out in the interim between now and our next workshop and board meeting. And I wanted to give you that introduction. Let me stop there before I go to the self-assessment and see if there's any early questions or comments about this. And there are a number of members of governance committee who are with us today, obviously, as board members who serve on that committee.
So any questions for Jim concerning the anticipated conflict of interest approach, essentially memorializing in more detail and also expanding upon what we have always had a conflict of interest regimen based on state law, but we're now going to put it in writing and I think expand upon it. Hearing none, we will have that for the meeting next month to actually act upon.
And then the next thing you'll be receiving that we want you to introduce to you that we had discussions with executive committee about is another governance best practice, which is self-assessment. Typically, boards do self-assessments at least a biannual, if not annual basis. And what this is a board-only exercise. Staff's not involved. It's not a public discourse. And we did research on various tools and techniques to be able to do board. We also contacted outside resources like BoardSource, which manages and helps not-for-profits in their governance processes and practices. And we did our homework around that. We had conversations. We looked at different questionnaires, survey tools, and we synthesized it into what we believe is a really strong, about 24 questionnaire about how we are doing as a board. In our processes, how do we deal with management? How do we deal with community? All those kind of questions. And it's confidentially answered. It's synthesized by SurveyMonkey, independent of us, and the materials that come out give us some feedback as a board of how we can improve communication or agenda development or presentation or whatever it is that we end up finding out through the self-assessment. So you're going to get what we're recommending, a working questionnaire that would be used by CSA. We hope that it will be supported and approved so that we can implement it still this year, so that this board, who's been functioning together, can step back and do an introspective review of its practices and its functions, and be able to have some agenda or have some feedback and some goals, aspirations that can be built in to the 2022 board process. So that self-assessment will be coming out in draft form to you as well from the governance committee. Questions on that? And again, there's governance committee members on the board who, if I miss something, could certainly help enrich this interim report.
Any questions? Okay, well, I having read that study, I'm sure everyone will take the time to answer it honestly, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it in terms of improving our governance approach. So thank you, Jim, and thank you to your committee.
Yeah, we're first going to see, is the board okay with doing that? And that's the step. And then if we get that approved by November, then we'll implement in November to be able to have results in December. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next, land use management, Mr. Minor. Unmute. You have to unmute. The joys of Zoom. No. Charlie, while you're trying to unmute, I'm going to move on to Barry. Keep trying. Barry Barth, MEMP. Charlie, when you just stay off, when you get off mute, stay off mute. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. First of all, Russell did a great job, kind of outlining what's been going on at MEMP. And obviously, Sam gave a brief summary on the joint task force that's taking place to basically track our progress in terms of construction and communication as it relates to the funding coming from the referendum for our major projects. So, I'd like to really thank Russell and Jared and the maintenance team for doing just a great job.
Okay, any questions for Barry on MEMP and the committee? Charlie, you're on land use management committee.
Once again, thanks to Ryan Cash. He's doing an excellent job. We're beginning to get very professional about this, and we have some tough issues here in this community that we still have to resolve, but we're working through them, and it's great to have Ryan heading that up.
Thank you, Charlie.
Have him do the forest preserve while he's still on. Advisory.
Yeah, Charlie, as long as you're on, why don't you do the Sea Pines Forest Preserve Advisory Board report?
The Forest Preserve is fortunate this year to have significant revenue improvement over prior years, thanks largely to Sea Pines Resort for the $2 room contribution and to some major contributions from residents and some major grants that Victoria chased down and got. So we are building our assets, and We have a number of major projects. The unfortunate part about the Forest Preserve is everything we do costs a lot of money. It also takes engineering, permitting, and approvals. So it takes a fair amount of time to take a project from its beginning to end. So we have two projects that we're focusing on. One is opening up the trail system behind Lake Mary, which is the beneficiary of Hurricane Matthew, and a lot of the places have been opened up, and the forest management plan that David has been implementing, and looking at the engineering necessary to improve access to Fish Island via the road and potentially a bike path from the entrance into Fish Island. So we have an engineering study going on for some of the trail recommendations in the back part of the Forest Preserve. We're expecting those reports to come back late October. We'll share them with the resort at that point in time because most of that land, well, that land is clearly partially the resorts. That's my report.
Any questions, David Pardue? Unmute. There you go.
I don't know why we're having so much problem with the muting. Normally, if you press the space bar, it works, but it wasn't for mine. And I should know the answer to this, but our gifts to the Forest Preserve Foundation, are they tax deductible?
They are indeed. It's a 501c3.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Charlie on that report? Again, Charlie, thanks to you and the work David's doing, and that committee is actively working to improve the Forest Preserve in a much more appropriate way. Thank you. Now we'll go back to Mr. Johnson on safety, security, and transportation. Bill?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The committee did not meet this month. However, Toby did a thorough job in outlining the activities that are going on. I expect that safety and security this fall will ramp up and be much busier. Our next meeting is October 27th, and that's my report.
Thank you, Bill. Short-term rental, Mr. Ellis.
You want the hour and a half version, or you just want the minute and a half version?
We'll take the minute and a half version, and you can, and those who want more can call you directly.
Well, they already do. As everyone knows, short-term rentals the last year and a half have been about as full and as active as can be. And the committee has, I asked for comments from the committee on things, suggestions that they thought, and we've gathered those. And gradually there are other committees and departments that are working on the various issues raised, such as you've seen Ryan Cash talk about, the rentals and the cost been on. Toby has done the same thing. And there's another committee working on, how it should proceed going in the future. It's just been a busy time, and it's brought to the forefront some things we have to deal with. And there are various groups within the CSA and the board committees that are looking at some of these things, because some of them are more properly addressed in conjunction with other committees. So that's the short version, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, David, and thank you for being as concise. Any questions for David on the short-term rental committee? Seeing none, we'll move on then to Mr. Pardue, strategic planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Strategic Planning Committee had an excellent meeting earlier in September. As we indicated last time, what we're doing now is to update the strategic plan that was approved by the former board in 2018. There are a number of things in that strategic plan that can come out because they were goals that we wanted, that the prior planners wanted the board and wanted the administration to concentrate on, that have now been taken care of. And so we're eliminating those and then adding some things that we think are important. The leader here has been Sam and Amanda Jones, who has done an excellent job in helping us with this. In the last meeting, Amanda presented, we literally went through the former plan line item by line item discussed what should come out, what should be added. And the next step is Amanda is now taking that information and will be presenting to our committee in November the version that the staff is recommended. If the committee then supports that, then I would anticipate at the next board meeting that we'll have recommendations for adopting a new strategic plan. So that's where we are. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from anyone? Thank you, David. Before we move to unfinished business, I do want to note although at my request, our directors have kept their committee report short, I don't want anyone to doubt the amount of effort that goes into chairing and participating in committees. All of our directors do participate in several committees. So many of them chair these committees. There's a lot of time put in, and these are the opportunities for our members of the public to actually participate in board work through the committee function. So I want to thank all of you for the amount of time you put in chairing and participating in the committee work, in addition to serving at these board meetings. So thank you. Before we move to unfinished business, I want to remind those who are watching that we are still taking questions for the board, if you have any, based on what you've learned to date or otherwise, at questions@csacpines.com. And with that, I will move to unfinished business. Under unfinished business, I've added an agenda item for noise regulations. Over the last year or more, I have received several inquiries, including a lengthy petition, asking us to consider regulations on leaf blower noise in particular, and landscaping noise, based on the fact that in many communities, it is a regular daily event where there is some group of landscapers in the neighborhood with very loud blowers. ASPO also had a task force that looked at this and came up with a recommendation. And I have continued to be besieged by members of our community asking if CSA will take on the issue. And so I've asked our staff, Sams and Russell Fredericks, to take a look at what's been done by other committees and on their own work, which they have, including working with our own landscaping outside resources in terms of what we require. And today I've asked Russell to put together a proposal that I would like the board to discuss. And if the board chooses to move forward, I'll ask the staff to actually create a set of rules and regulations for our consideration at one of our next two meetings. So Russell, with that introduction as to why we're here on this issue and their unfinished business, it's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just give me a moment to bring up a quick PowerPoint presentation. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. There we go. We can see that. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Sam. We've spent a lot of time looking at this issue. Obviously, the leaf blower noise issue has been something that everyone's probably heard about. Other areas of the country, many municipalities have banned leaf blowers in other states. For sea pines, obviously, our community and the nature of the community with the debris that's both on roadways and yards, and the need to clean up after storms is, as we all know, is critical. So again, we took a look at what the town of Hilton Head in the current noise ordinance. We took a look at the ASPO and LUM recommendations that we received, and we also put together, as you mentioned, the what we feel CSA recommendations are at this point in time. So if everyone could see that, the current state of leaf blowers in the town of Hilton Head ordinance, and as Toby could speak to, as he deals with this noise issue quite often in the evening hours, currently construction is allowed from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So any noise levels above that 95 decibel level, he will deal with both after hours and during the day. This landscape work is also allowed from 7 to 10. In sea pines, as we all know, it's allowed from Monday to Saturday. Sundays, there's no commercial activity. Again, from the town level, the noise greater than 95 decibels is measured from the property line. Golf courses and tennis courts are exempt under the current town ordinance. Again, so we looked at, again, the permissible days, hours of use. And again, some of these policies are already covered in the gate entry policy regarding commercial work. They're also included in the town's LMO in relation to this ordinance. With that being said, we're going to go to the recommendations that both the LUM Committee, ASPO, and CSA currently have in terms of decibel rating. Land use management looked at a 65 decibel rating from the edge of property. Same for ASPO. And our CSA recommendation, we're offering a 65 to 75 decibel rating as per the manufacturer's specifications. All this equipment is measured by the what's called ANSI, the American National Safety Institute, for these standards for all power equipment. They do give them a rating for decibels. Moving on to the permissible days, land use management offered Monday to Saturday, no use on Sundays, the same for ASPO, and CSA does fall in line with that as well. Also, we need to look at certain holidays during the season that this sort of activity would not be allowed. Permissible hours, land use management looked at 7 to 8 o'clock to a 5 p.m. Finish. ASPO, there was no time specified. As far as CSA, we feel Monday to Friday, 7 to 7, which would also fall in line with the commercial activity. This would apply to residential property owners as well. Saturdays would be 8 to 5. And then as far as commercial contractors and homeowners, Sunday would be also be off the table. In terms of compliance and setting this policy up, land use management looked at a 2-year compliance, and then exemptions would include roads, leisure trails, parking lots, storm cleanup, golf courses, and tennis courts would be exempt. The ASPO policy applied to residential property owners. As far as CSA, we would see an 18-month compliance period for commercial contractors, 24 months for homeowners. There'd be an exemption for storm cleanup, roads and leisure trails, parking lots, all days of the week, and then tractors and wheel blowers would be exempt. As far as the town is concerned, there's currently nothing on the docket for consideration offhand, or no recommendations that we're aware of that the town's making. Again, those permissible hours, again, Toby could speak to that, 7 to 10. Security does currently receive calls for noise complaints during the weekend and on the weekend. So Larry, I would turn it back over to you to continue the discussion.
Larry, you're on mute.
Larry, you're on mute.
Thanks. Essentially, we have a proposal for whether there should be a noise regulation at all, what levels should be limited, what days of the week, what hours during those days, any exceptions for particular users, whether it should apply to property owners, and how long the transition is. So I'll open this up to discussion among the board members to see whether we want to adopt rules, and then just generally where we should be on the rules themselves. Jim Caskey.
Thank you. Sam and Russell, great overview in that. What about the enforcement? We probably need to have a little discussion around how do you enforce this before we even what the guidelines should be. I accessible to go out and call security because my neighbor's got a leaf blower at 75, or what are the mechanics around that before we would decide on any guidelines?
Jim, let me just briefly say, because this is something I've thought about. If we were to adopt an equipment standard for commercial leaf blowers, commercial landscapers, presumably those that get their annual pass would have to certify that they meet the standard. Those that come in daily would have to certify that they meet the standard and would have to prove it. And if they were then proven to not have equipment that is operating outside the standard, we could yank their pass. In terms of if we were to impose it on property owners, obviously it would require a complaint from a property owner of a very loud noise blower, followed by security. My concern with a standard that is based solely on the noise level rather than the equipment is that it takes someone to measure it. And it seems to me it then puts property owners in the line of enforcement and regular complaints that something's too loud, and they measured it. And by the time security got out there, either they were gone or the wind was blowing in the other direction, or it wasn't measured exactly 50 feet. So personally, I think the better course is to do it based on equipment standards, because you buy something and it says it meets this standard or it doesn't. And we can certainly enforce that better. Sam or Russell, did you want to add anything there?
No, sir.
All right, nothing on my end. No, sir.
So that's how we would enforce it. Carolyn?
Yes, so thank you guys for doing this work, because it's been a big issue in the community. And I do think that we should put some type of regulation around this. I mean, I think this is something that we do need to address, and I'm in favor of developing some regulation. In a general comment as to what I just saw on that screen, I'm just a little troubled that as a homeowner, I'm not allowed to blow my driveway on a Sunday. Just extrapolate that out. I'm doing yard works, I've had some debris or whatever, and I cannot get my blower out on Sunday because it's prohibited. I mean, the landscape companies I can understand, because they're not allowed to work on Sundays anyhow, but as a homeowner, I would have a problem with that. So just a comment to put into the mix.
So you would suggest we consider an exception for homeowners on Sunday?
I don't even want to use the word exception. I'm just pointing out what I can see as a very viable scenario for people who live here full time who would need to use a blower on Sunday. And I would hate to all of a sudden, have our strange security forces being deployed around the community for people who are trying to take care of their yard on a Sunday. So
okay,
I don't have an answer. Just a comment.
Yeah, Dave Borghese.
I was wondering if there was a reason that we went from a range of 65 to 75 when the other organizations were set at 65. Can you explain that? Does that have to do with the type of equipment that's available? If you just comment on that, that'd be helpful.
Yes, thank you for the question, Dave. And the answer with that is yes. There is a range of decibel levels in some of this newer equipment. Most of them kind of fit in that range, and we feel providing that range is a better solution than just targeting that 65 decibel level.
And recognize, David, I think 65 would be measured at a certain distance. These things are rated based on the ANSI standard, which may or may not be distance oriented, and is probably if it is distance, is based in being measured in some kind of controlled environment. And so it's, again, this goes back to my prior career. It makes a difference whether you're measuring outdoors versus indoors or in a dome versus whatever. So I'm assuming these ANSI standards are based on a specific measurement technique, and the range may give you the same amount of sound. Bill Johnson.
Thank you. Barry Barth and I both served on this committee with ASPO. A couple points of interest. When you're going from 65 to 75 decibels, that is not merely just a 15% increase in sound. It's considerably more than that. Also, I believe it was measured, Larry, at a distance of 50 feet in an outdoor environment. Question for Russell. In our current contract that we have with Brightview, do we have a limitation as to decibel noise that they can not exceed?
Thank you for the question, Bill. And as part of this conversation, we're talking about specific backpack blowers. And we're not talking about the rest of the equipment that's tow behind blowers and things of that nature. So again, within our agreement with Brightfield, there are some details there that regarding those decibel levels as it relates to the backpack blowers. But not getting into the details of that contract, but there are some specifications within there.
And they are, without giving specifics, they're not inconsistent with what you are recommending here.
That's correct.
Barry Barth. Unmute.
Sorry. Yes, I think Bill stated really well. First of all, I applaud the ASPO group and also LUM, in terms of kind of leading the charge on this. Not to say that CSA was dragging behind, but the inertia came from homeowners. But I think one of the things I'm a little concerned about in terms of our proposed rules is the implementation period. I mean, I think 18 months personally is too long. I mean, I think we should, I'm not saying we have to say by the end of the year you have to do this, but I'm afraid that, and I'm sympathetic, especially to the companies that have to purchase new equipment, but they're constantly having to purchase new equipment anyway. But I do think they might have a tendency to just wait until the 18 months comes up. I mean, I think there ought to be a good faith kind of transition that's taking place, and maybe some of it really comes into play when they get their tags, at the beginning of the year. I'm not saying necessarily we reward, or maybe we do reward some of the companies that might start implementing this sooner, or that we make sure that they get recognition, so that our homeowners understand that we're getting a buy-in, from that commercial community that basically is understanding that life goes on. I mean, that we need to be a partner with the homeowners, in the pursuit of lowering noise in the community. So I would look for a shorter timeline or some incentives, maybe. And I like David's idea of creating an incentive opportunity for homeowners, maybe through local stores here or big box stores or whatever, so that people will start converting over.
Thank you, Barry. I think that the idea of incentive is a good one. My concern of something to think about is if you make it too tight, you really are hurting the smaller landscapers, of which there are very many coming into our community. If you can just look up and down Governor's Road on a daily basis and see the number of trucks. And so I think we were trying to figure out something that would, the useful life of what they have today you wouldn't be taking too much of it away. But that's a good point, and maybe the incentive is the way to encourage people to do it sooner. Charlie Minor?
I co-chaired the LUM committee looking at the same issue and at the work that the ASPO committee did. The area that we came into some concern is we agree that it would be nice if you could certify equipment and say this equipment's, you can use it within CPINs, which would mean that you would maintain a list of equipment that meets the standard. Unfortunately, we could not find anywhere that the industry uses ANSI to actually create an industry standard. They self-rate on occasion. Consumer Reports has some results out, but there is no industry standard as to sound rating of equipment. So none that we could find. And if we can find it, that's fine. And I think that's certainly a lever to go forward. I would also note that we did a fair amount of research trying to find another community that had a leaf blower standard. And the ones we found simply outlawed leaf blowers. We found no community standard in which a sound level was the criteria for the equipment itself. Certainly the 95 decibels at the property level or at the property line is the standard for Hilton Head. So I think we need to be careful on saying that we're going to rate the equipment. We need to make a double check and make sure that those ratings are out there. I think they're mostly self-ratings, but if that's adequate for us, that's fine too. But I think we need to do a little more research on the actual equipment rating out there.
Russell, do you have a response on that?
And Charlie, thank you for your feedback. As you mentioned, many of the communities or townships around the country have indeed come out with outright bans of leaf blowers versus introducing a decibel rating. Again, on this equipment, the ANSI standard is out there and something that we can go by in these manufacturers' recommendations. Or there's likely some equipment out there that might not have it, but certainly on the top end manufacturers, they would provide that information with the equipment. To the 18 months timeline, obviously this equipment's expensive, and one of the bigger issues that we're seeing out there now is the supply chain issues across the board, whether it's glass, plastic, or what have you, or even parts for equipment. I know we've been really kind of struggling to obtain parts when we need them on equipment right now. I know there's great backlogs in equipment. So as far as when this would roll forward, those are considerations that we're going to have to look at closely, is availability, and can landscape companies or property owners make a transition within that time frame. So those are my comments offhand.
Thank you, Russell. Greg Thompson.
Thank you, Larry. Just got back from New Jersey, and the town that my daughter, excuse me, lives in up there didn't ban leaf blowers per se. What they did was they banned the gas operated leaf blowers. And I think most of the battery powered units would fit inside that 65 to 75 decibel rating. So just a thought.
Russell?
Comment on that. I do know that some of these landscape companies are using the battery powered equipment. Battery life is fairly short lived. The power is not nearly the same, especially in wet conditions. Again, the golf courses are exempt when they're blown off tees and greens. I could speak for what we do on a daily basis, and if we have a rainfall and we have to clean up after it, when a lot of pine straw on the ground, the battery powered blowers simply are not an option at this point in time with the technology. Perhaps in the next couple of years, technology will be there as far as power and durability and length of time that they hold the charge. I think for the average property owner that's blowing off your deck or patio, things of that nature, I think the battery power is a great option. But certainly on wet ground, wet grass, wide and long roadways like we have in sea pines, I think that the battery power, at least for us at this point in time, as well as other entities in sea pines, wouldn't be a realistic option.
Yeah, Russell, I think what the town did was ban the gas powered blowers for homeowners.
I see. Okay.
Commercial folks, when you're doing parking lots or golf courses or what have you, still doing the gas stuff. But for homeowners, like I say, it's probably a good idea.
And Greg, I guess the concern I have with basing it on a specific technology is if equipment comes out gas powered that in fact can meet the standard, is rated to stay below the standard, it seems to me we ought not be stopping someone from buying it. Or if there's a way to modify existing equipment to also be allowed to stay below the standard. So I think it would be great if we did that. And from homeowners' perspective, I think the board needs to consider whether or not we want to unduly burden our homeowners to a particular technology, again, if there's a standard that they can meet with whatever they can buy. So from my perspective, it's kind of like saying you have to buy an Apple phone versus a Samsung phone because one may or may not work better than the other, whereas, if both phones meet certain standards, we ought to allow them all in the marketplace. But that's for the board to think through. Other comments, other questions? Mr. Ellis?
I think there's so much interest in this, and there's so many divergent views and opinions that need to come to an agreement. We need to do what you suggested at the beginning. We probably need to make this, let a proposal come forth from our people, from Russell, and whoever else should be involved in that. Bring it to a task force and then let us hash it out so we can move forward. I think that, we're all in favor of that. I went to an electric, not battery operated, but I have a cord that, extension cord that reaches far enough around, and I've been doing that for years and years and years. And, very satisfied for my house. And the thing I think we're all talking about is when you're in your house or you own your deck and these gas operated landscapers are doing your neighbor's house or your house, it interferes with your enjoyment of your property. And so I don't think anyone is talking about commercial, streets or anything of that nature. But that would be, I'd go back to your suggestion at the very beginning.
Well, let me, Dave Pardue.
Yes, I appreciate everyone's work on this, and I think it's great, the proposal that Russell and the staff have brought forward. The only comment is that if we can enforce this at the machinery level, I think it's going to be great. I really would not want to get into inviting homeowners to to call security and get somebody out there. I think we're already stretched to that level. Also, I think if you left it up to people calling security and complaining about their neighbors, no matter what equipment is being used, you're going to still have certain high noise levels. For example, you may have you may have equipment that's 65, but these commercial landscapers, they don't work in one-man shops. There are 2 or 3 of them. A lot of times you may have 2 or 3 leaf blowers going at the same time. And so you're gonna have a noise level a lot of times that are gonna irritate the neighbor. But I don't think we can say that you can only operate one at a time, or at least I guess not. Maybe the committees have thought about that, but I'm just pointing out no matter what kind of equipment is going to be used, we're going to still have complaints, particularly when more than one piece of equipment is being used on landscaping at the same time.
Dave, I appreciate that. Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, just quickly, I agree with David, and I would love to see us work towards sort of guidelines. I think we could put up, when you blow your yard, try to do it in 20 minutes or less, try to do it at this and that, get somebody to work on that. I just see a horrendous thing of us getting into policing this and people calling in, and that'd be another 10,000 phone calls a year about blowers and so forth. So maybe we can come up with some good rules of just be a good neighbor. And when you do blowing your stuff and do the same thing, we can provide those a set of guidelines, quote unquote, for the commercial people as well, and just see how that works for a year or so and see if it improves.
Scott, you're more optimistic than I, but I think from a property owner maybe, but I can only tell you that there isn't a month that goes by that at least 5 people don't ask me when we are going to bring down the noise level from commercial landscapers. And Sam knows I was probably less sympathetic to it until on a regular basis I'd be talking to him on some point on Thursday when my landscaper walks by on the deck, and literally you can't hear at 95 decibels or higher. So I admit I've become a zealot for finding a reasonable solution on the commercial landscaping, because when you go in any neighborhood, there's 2 or 3 of them in the neighborhood at any given day. So I'll admit my bias, but this is a board decision and a board policy.
No, I agree. I understand that. I just don't want us to get into policing it. It's just one more thing to.
Well, I think that is the one area that we need to give a lot of thought to in terms of if we make it a noise level, we give everyone the right to measure the noise. If we make it an equipment matter, we have a little bit greater enforcement in terms of who gets into our gate from a commercial perspective. In terms of the property owners, Carolyn, you're right. I think we need to be sensitive to the various days that our property owners may or may not be able to work on them. I think we need to be sensitive to the amount of time we need to give them, because they will, folks who bought one last year are not going to be happy if 6 months from now they have to get rid of it. But we do at some point, like anything else, if we're going to improve the lifestyle in our community, and this is certainly one area where we can, we have to lay some, in my mind, we have to lay some rules down. So these have been very helpful comments from all of you. I'd like to have a sense of the board that we can ask Russell and the staff to work with our council to develop a set of rules that we can talk about again in November, at our November meeting, specifics. And then we can either adopt them or decide to modify them and come back in December and work on a second level. So is everyone agreed with, okay with moving this to the next level, which is coming up with a written set of rules that we can talk about at our next meeting and see how they fly and modify appropriately if we don't like them? Can I show of hands if that's okay? Okay, we will move forward then, Russell and Sam, and we'll work with council to come up with a set of guidelines a set of rules, both from an enforcement perspective and the various things that Russell's got. Thank you for a very helpful conversation on that. Moving then to new business, the nominating committee, Bill Johnson, would you like to announce the current nominating committee results?
Yeah, it's currently on cpinesliving.com, but let me first say that I chaired this committee along with David Pardue and David Ellis, and we took this responsibility very seriously. We had great in-depth interviews with all the Class A applicants, and there was a lot of follow-up discussion that led to our decision. We had 7 applicants for Class A director positions, and I will tell you, it really was enlightening in rewarding to see the quality or the caliber of the people that applied. We felt as a nominating committee that it would, if you're going to be a director or be elected as a director, we felt that it was going to be, it was going to put you in a much better position if you had some experience, either serving on a task force, a committee, or involvement in Sea Pines, so that it gave you an awareness level of what CSA actually does. And so out of the 7, we asked 3 to please consider getting involved on a committee or task force, and we all 3 of us offered help in shepherding them through that process, which most of them gladly accepted, and I feel confident that at least 2 of the 3, if not all 3, we'll get involved in a committee next year. But the end result was that the 4 people that we did endorse from the nominating committee would be Bob Quinn, Rich Spear, who's an incumbent, Tom Sharp, and we had a lot of controversy on this one, but we went ahead and endorsed Larry Motion. That's a joke.
I know him. I've heard that name before. Thank you, Bill. Next is nominating committee results from Class B. Mark King, are you around and able to do that? Mark, are you still with us? Can't tell. Yes,
okay, Larry, thank you. I co-chair the committee with Don Sigmund. We have 2 nominees for the 2 positions that are open. First nominee is actually an incumbent that we have renominated, Jim Caskey. And the second nominee is Bob Gossett, who is everyone's familiar, owns South Beach And Bob has served on the board for a number of years previously and has taken a sabbatical for probably the last 6 or 7 years. So our two nominees are Jim Caskey and Bob Gossett.
Thank you, Mark. With that, as Amanda noted, the date of record for the election of the CSA board, for the RPOs is October 1, 2021. So if you are in fact a property owner on October 1, you are entitled to vote. Unlike referendum, every property owner gets the number of votes of the number of properties they own. I can only, again, encourage folks to listen to the candidates forum on October 26th, read the answers to questions that they may post, read their biographies and other materials that they provide, and vote, because like every other election, state, federal, local, your vote is important to determining who will be sitting on this board next year and the direction that the board may take. So I encourage you to vote. Lastly, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 encroachment agreements that we've all looked at before and approved. We're asked to ratify them. So I'm going to put all 5 up for a vote. Is there any discussion on any of them? Seeing none, is there anyone disapproving any of them? Seeing none, can I see an approval by hands raised for all 5 of them? They are all approved. With that, is there any other business to come before the meeting today from the board? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion for adjournment. Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Barth. And we are therefore adjourned. Amanda, do we have questions for the board? Amanda?
I think there are 1 or 2 questions, Larry.
I do see them, okay.
Yes,
I see one from, I see a comment from Bing West, but it's not a question, just pointing out his support for the leaf blowers. Question from Lee Stevens. Would it be possible at future board meetings to share the financial statements as they are discussed during the update? It would help those attending via YouTube and following. Sam, can we do that?
Absolutely, we can do that.
Okay, Lee, I thank you for that question. And yes, we will do that for all future meetings. They are, I believe, available on the website.
Yes, sir.
So for those who, Victoria, where on the website would they be found?
I think it's under the Finance Committee section.
Okay. Next is a question from Alex Cruden. Larry, what are your thoughts about the increasing independence of the Sea Pines POA, the group formerly known as ASPO? Is its move towards separating from CSA a good thing? Well, I chair CSA as the chair of CSA and a member of the board of directors of CSA. My focus is on the entire community. The Sea Pines POA and formerly are now DBA has a different group of members. It's a voluntary community of those who choose to join. And so what its mission is will be determined by its members and its board of directors. And I'm not sure it's really fair for me to comment on it other than to say that to the extent that it takes positions on behalf of its members, we'll certainly consider those. Comment from John Weisenhorn. I agree with Carolyn Adams regarding homeowners using their blowers. And John, thank you for that comment. I assure you that your comment and Mr. Bing West's comment in favoring certain parts will be taken into consideration. Sam, did Amanda have any other questions?
Those
are the questions that came to us. So with no other questions to hear, on behalf of the chair and the staff, we thank you all for sitting in. Thank you, board members, for your participation. We'll see you again during the